During the Warring States period, the princes were divided and wars broke out in various countries. Among them, Qi and Wei fought the most fiercely. But if you want to win the battle, you must be familiar with the art of war, and Guiguzi is the most mysterious military strategist. It is said that he wrote a military strategy, and no matter which princes get this military strategy, they can dominate the world. And this military strategy was only passed on to his disciple Sun Bin. So, envoys from various countries came to Mr. Guiguzi's seclusion and asked Mr. Sun Bin to come down the mountain. At this time, Sun Bin was hiding from the stray arrows behind the tree. Although he has extraordinary talents, he is simple and kind by nature and has no desire for fame and fortune. He watched the poor people risk their lives to go to the battlefield with arrows in exchange for food. Sun Bin not only dissuaded them, but also saved the lives of a pair of siblings in a critical moment. The two siblings knew how to repay their gratitude. They brought Sun Bin to the Wei army camp. They wanted to exchange arrows for food to repay Sun Bin's life-saving grace. Unexpectedly, the war in Wei state was tight, and the strategy of exchanging arrows for food had been cancelled. They also wanted to force the two siblings to serve as soldiers. Seeing that the Wei army was so unfair, Sun Bin immediately stepped forward to argue. Knowing that the person in front of him was Sun Bin, the general of the Wei army was like grabbing a life-saving straw. He not only ordered to release the food, but also led the entire army to kneel in front of Sun Bin, threatening his life and begging Sun Bin to help defeat the enemy. Seeing the Wei general like this, Sun Bin had no choice but to agree. That day, the two of them went to investigate the enemy situation, but Sun Bin's attention was attracted by the female general of the Qi army. This woman was Tian Xi, the daughter of Tian Ji, the general of Qi state. It was because of her that the Wei army was defeated. Sun Bin behaved like a lustful person. After observing for a while, he completely forgot the strategy to defeat the enemy. The furious general of the Wei army drew his sword and threw it on the ground, letting him end his life. At this time, Sun Bin suddenly noticed the shadow of the sun reflected in the water, and he instantly thought of a way to deal with the Qi army. The next day, Tian Xi noticed something strange. It was a sunny day, but the sky was as dark as night. The Wei army disguised themselves and sneaked into the enemy camp. They caught the other side off guard. The Qi army's defense was negligent, and they were exploited. They couldn't tell the enemy from the friend for a while, and suffered heavy casualties. In the chaos, Tian Xi saw the clues, and reminded her men to distinguish the enemy with red ropes. Although she was a woman, she was heroic and had the style of a general. With the two long swords in her hands, she led her men out of the siege. Although the Qi army had been defeated, the Wei army still slaughtered mercilessly. When Sun Bin saw this scene on the top of the mountain, he realized that he was helping the tyrant. He jumped off the cliff and escaped in an emotional state. In this battle, the Wei army broke through the border city of Qi in one fell swoop, and the military advisor Peng Huan returned triumphantly with everyone. The young general told him that it was Sun Bin who taught the Wei army how to break the formation. Peng Huan laughed instead of getting angry, because they were both disciples of Guiguzi, and they had been like brothers since childhood. Now seeing that Sun Bin had such a brilliant plan, Peng Huan concluded that his master had passed on the art of war to him, so he immediately ordered Sun Bin to be captured and brought back to Wei. But they were a step too late. Tian Xi found Sun Bin first after many inquiries. In order to rescue her father, who was implicated, she planned to tie Sun Bin back to Qi and present him to the king of Qi. Upon hearing the news, the king of Qi asked people to treat him with state etiquette, and he even went out to greet him in person. But Sun Bin kept his master's teachings in mind and was always unwilling to serve as an official in the court. It can be seen that Sun Bin kept looking at Tian Xi on the side, and the king of Qi immediately saw through his mind, so he asked him to stay in the palace as Tian Xi's retainer. Sun Bin couldn't help but secretly rejoice, but Tian Xi couldn't stand it. She just wanted to use Sun Bin to buy back her father's freedom, and now her wish has been fulfilled. When she returned to the mansion, she immediately gave him a warning. After the maids turned around and left, Sun Bin shouted for help and then sank to the bottom of the water. Seeing that he hadn't come out for so long, Tian Xi was a little worried, and she went forward to check. Unexpectedly, Sun Bin suddenly pulled her into the water and laughed at her fiercely. Tian Xi, who was furious, picked up a stick and rushed straight into Sun Bin's room without even wearing shoes. After a while, Sun Bin's wailing resounded throughout the yard. After finishing the matter, Tian Xi walked out with satisfaction. Soon, the countries gathered together to discuss the border town. The kings of all countries came forward. Only the king of Wei was in poor health, so he asked Peng Huan to come instead. But the talks were not harmonious, and the kings quarreled over the war soon. In this situation, the helpless King Zhou could only propose a solution. They agreed to use horse racing to decide the winner. However, in order to win the horse race, Wei state poisoned Qi state's Dilu horse. Dilu horse was Tian Xi's favorite thing, and Sun Bin was so angry that he wanted to participate in the horse race in person to avenge Tian Xi. Although Qi state's horses were not as strong as Wei state's horses, Sun Bin not only understood the art of war, but also spoke horse language. Looking at Sun Bin, who was desperately crushing his opponents on the field, Tian Xi seemed to have some good feelings for Sun Bin at this moment. It was this victory that made Sun Bin shine. That night, Pang Huan wanted to take Sun Bin back to Wei state by force. Tian Xi immediately drew his sword to stop them, and they fought each other. The king of Qi, who got the news, quickly led his troops to surround the entire yard. But Pang Huan was not afraid of this at all. The Wei army was strong, and the king of Qi could only choose to compromise, but the condition was to return the border town to Qi state. After arriving in Wei, Pang Huan immediately asked Sun Bin to write down the military tactics taught by Guiguzi. Sun Bin did not refuse, but what he wrote were all the ways of using troops recorded in ancient books. This made the king of Wei think that Sun Bin was playing a trick on him. Pang Huan's sister Waner guessed that Sun Bin was about to encounter an accident, so she secretly asked someone to take Sun Bin out of the city and wanted to send him back to Qi. But the silly Sun Bin refused to leave. When she returned to the palace again, she was accused of secretly communicating with Qi. The king of Wei knew that if he couldn't get it, he would destroy it, so he asked Pang Huan whether he should execute Sun Bin. Pang Huan looked up and saw that his sister actually pointed a bow at the king of Wei. He could only kneel down and ask for another chance. In the days that followed, Sun Bin suffered inhumane torture, but he never said the military tactics. But Pang Huan's desire for the military tactics was enough to make him ignore the brotherhood between the two of them. He ordered Sun Bin to be punished by patellar cutting. Rows of torture instruments were spread out in the prison, and the jailer came to Sun Bin with a boning hook. It was not until this moment that Sun Bin felt fear. The jailer ruthlessly covered the black cloth, and as the boning hook fell, one of Sun Bin's kneecaps was removed. Pang Huan angrily killed the jailer, and the jailer's death temporarily eliminated Pang Huan's guilt, so he found Sun Bin with red eyes and asked him to hand over the military strategy. But Sun Bin refused to say anything, and Pang Huan was furious, so he ordered someone to remove another patella. After a scream, Sun Bin had become a useless person. Suffering such great torture, Sun Bin became mentally ill. In order to test whether he was really crazy or pretending to be crazy, Pang Huan sent him to the guillotine. Sun Bin looked at the executioner's axe, but he was not afraid at all. Sun Bin was really crazy. Sun Bin was thrown on the street like a beggar and was laughed at by passers-by. He even barked at dogs in public. When Tian Xi learned that Sun Bin was tortured, she immediately asked the king of Qi to go to Wei to rescue him. After Tian Xi's painstaking persuasion, the king of Qi finally agreed. Tian Xi first came to Pang Huan's house. The three of them were old acquaintances. Waner was Tian Xi's sister. She had made an engagement with Sun Bin, and later she was forced by her brother to be betrothed to the king of Wei as a concubine. They secretly passed the information in front of Pang Huan. Seeing Sun Bin's current appearance, Tian Xi felt very sad. I thought Sun Bin was really crazy, but after Tian Xi played his favorite instrument, Sun Bin's facial expression gradually changed. This made Tian Xi realize that he was pretending to be crazy. Then, Tian Xi sent 2 carriages to meet him and prepared to replace him. Unexpectedly, Sun Bin hugged the tree and refused to leave. The guards who were secretly monitoring noticed something unusual and began to approach the carriage. Tian Xi had no choice but to retreat first. After the guards approached, Sun Bin fell to the ground and excitedly imitated the sound of a horse. Tian Xi was very confused about this. Pang Huan, who learned the news, had an idea. He tied Sun Bin up and locked him in the stable, waiting for Tian Xi to take the bait. At this time, Tian Xi, who had returned to his residence, was asking his men to imitate Sun Bin's movements. But after studying for a long time, everyone still couldn't guess the meaning. Seeing that there was not much time left, Tian Xi had to take a strong attack. Little did he know that this was exactly what Pang Huan wanted. After getting rid of several guards, Tian Xi and his men rushed to the stable. But they couldn't find Sun Bin here, and they were surrounded by the guards who came. After a fierce fight, only Tian Xi and her personal maid escaped by chance. At the same time, Sun Bin in the stable was nowhere to be seen. Tian Xi had no choice but to come alone to ask Pang Huan, hoping that he would be able to show some leniency for the past. At this time, his men suddenly reported that Sun Bin had been rescued. Pang Huan suddenly realized that he had been tricked. He led his men to chase after them at full speed, and when they were about to reach the border of Qi, Pang Huan decisively drew his bow and shot Sun Bin in the carriage. Tian Xi was also quickly stopped, but the person who was shot was not Sun Bin. Seeing that the Qi army opened the door to fight, Pang Huan had no choice but to let Tian Xi go. Tian Xi jumped onto the carriage and kicked the guard away. Then she rode towards Qi. Pang Huan had to jump off and let Tian Xi leave alone. At this time, he saw Sun Bin under the carriage. It turned out that Sun Bin had been hiding under the carriage from beginning to end. Pang Huan realized that every step he took was calculated. The reason why Sun Bin refused to leave was because he knew that he would die, even if he got on the carriage. So he made a secret signal that only Tian Xi understood, and took the opportunity to pick up the discarded saw. While he waited for Tian Xi to break into the stable, he dug through the wall and took the opportunity to hide in the carriage. It was the tacit understanding between Sun Bin and Tian Xi that created this perfect escape. With the announcement of the King of Qi, Sun Bin's experience was known to the whole country. Coupled with the previous wars with Wei, this also aroused the people's resentment against Wei. For a time, Sun Bin's prestige reached a new height. But now Sun Bin, who only had half of his life left, was completely desperate. In order not to drag down Tian Xi, he tied a stone to his waist and threw it into the pool. But his behavior seemed to be opposed by God, and an earthquake suddenly occurred in Qi state in a moment. The earthquake drained all the water in the pool, leaving Sun Bin in the pit, unable to die. God's will was so, Sun Bin gave up suicide, and he turned to make plans for Qi state. He was ready to assist the King of Qi to go to war with Wei state. After the earthquake, Tian Xi and Sun Bin wanted to appease the people. When they passed by a beggar who was also suffering from the punishment of Bin, Sun Bin felt pity and rewarded him with some money and property. Unexpectedly, the other party suddenly attacked and wanted to sentence Sun Bin to death. Fortunately, Tian Xi was a martial arts expert with many guards. Although he was caught off guard, he handled it properly. Who knew that the assassin was well prepared, and he used the hidden sword. Thanks to Tian Xi, who was wearing soft armor, he sacrificed himself to save Sun Bin, which saved Sun Bin. In order to find out the enemy's spies, all the ministers gathered together and prepared to kill all the refugees who were hiding assassins to eliminate future troubles. But killing refugees was inevitably criticized by the world, so Sun Bin came up with a clever plan and invited all the ministers to observe together. As a result, it turned out that he planned to put spicy food in the porridge. Real refugees must be hungry and eat anything, and real assassins must find it difficult to swallow. But the result was shocking, and 99% of them could not eat it. Only a few people looked embarrassed, but still drank all the porridge. Tian Xi immediately ordered a few people to be arrested. But this group of assassins had been prepared, and they all committed suicide by taking poison. Seeing this, the ministers of Qi state all smiled, except Tian Ji, who looked serious. And all of this was seen by Sun Bin. Although it was confirmed that Tian Ji was a spy from the enemy country, Sun Bin did not expose it. Because the battle with Pang Huan was imminent, he wanted to break his army, defeat his laws, and control his people's hearts. Before the expedition, the King of Qi promised Sun Bin that he would give him a great gift regardless of whether the battle was successful or not. Soon, the Qi army was approaching. At this time, Pang Huan was still leading his troops to attack the state of Zhao. Faced with Sun Bin's pressure, Pang Huan had to give up attacking the state of Zhao and return to defend the border. Because it was not easy to shake the morale of the army before the war, Sun Bin called Tian Ji to drink alone, and he persuaded him with kind words. Tian Ji, who wanted to betray, was appeased, thus ensuring the stability of the rear. Sun Bin knew that the King of Wei was suspicious by nature and had long been dissatisfied with Pang Huan's monopoly of power. So he wrote another letter to the King of Wei. Because he could not bear to see the sword and harm the people, he hereby suggested that the two countries only fight and rest. Just in case, Sun Bin stated that he had set an ambush at Meiling Road. King Wei knew that this was Sun Bin's counter-espionage plan, so he was ready to take advantage of it, get rid of Pang Huan, and regain military power. Wanner knew King Wei's purpose, so she went to the Wei army camp in the middle of the night to persuade Pang Huan not to fight easily. However, Pang Huan had made up his mind and insisted on going to compete with Sun Bin. Seeing that her brother was so unwilling to listen to her advice, Wanner immediately drew her sword and threatened to commit suicide. But even so, Pang Huan was still obsessed. Wanner had no choice but to set fire to the military rations. Unexpectedly, this further stimulated his fighting spirit. Just as Pang Huan led the army to Maling Road, a dead tree strangely appeared on the road, with Pang Huan stopped here, written on it. To be cautious, Pang Huan immediately sent people to explore the way first, but he never expected that Sun Bin had been waiting on the top of the mountain for a long time. The vanguard of the Wei army was soon solved by the ambushed Qi army. Seeing that the time was ripe, Tian Ji waved his hand and cut the rope. Countless boulders fell from the cliff, and the Wei army was killed and wounded in an instant. Pang Huan could only order people to quickly extinguish the torches in their hands. Afterwards, Pang Huan ordered all the remaining Wei troops to surrender and put down their weapons. Seeing his senior brother like this, Sun Bin was extremely happy. But at the critical moment, Tian Ji cut the rope again, wanting to kill all the Wei army. Sun Bin was anxious, but it was too late. The boulders rolled down in an instant. When everything returned to calm, the Wei army had been slaughtered in the snow. Thinking that his senior brother died because of him, Sun Bin was extremely painful. Although he had a rare talent, he hated killing. But as long as he was alive, there would be fights among the princes. He didn't want war anymore. In the heavy snow, Sun Bin jumped off the cliff and ended his life. At this time, Tian Xi, dressed in red, came galloping on horseback. This was the great gift that the king of Qi had promised to Sun Bin. After they looked at each other for the last time, their love ended. The film ends here. Thank you for watching.